And good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Fireside Chat. Today I'm joined by Dr. Catherine Ball, who is an associate professor, advisor, author, speaker, founder, executive producer, executive director, company director, charity patron, future thinker, wife, mother, and a bit of a rebel. Actually, probably a lot of a rebel. Catherine enjoys working across global projects where emerging technologies meet humanitarian, education and environmental needs alongside world-leading academics and outliers. Catherine also likes to create businesses, champion movements, collaborate with peers and advise game changers. She's also a bit of a game changer herself. So she's an academic, a humanitarian, an environmentalist and a savvy businesswoman, and actually just an all-round really nice woman. So Catherine, welcome to today. So
no, I'm very tired after listening to that list. I feel like I should be doing something.
I'm not sure you've done enough yet, actually.
No, I'm not.
Keep going. Let's maybe go back to sort of before you actually were even living in Australia, back in the UK when you were a young girl and you were having a think about what it was that you wanted to be when you grew up and why.
So when I was about 3 or 4, I wanted to be a ballerina, of course, because that was, the thing to want to do. Then I wanted to be an astronaut. Then I wanted to be a vet. Then I wanted to be a doctor. And then I wanted to be David Attenborough, I think. So I went through this whole evolution of what do you want to be when you grow up. And I still haven't quite figured out what I want to be when I grow up. But yeah, so I was very much interested in languages. I almost went into just studying languages and European law, which in hindsight was a good thing I didn't do, really, isn't it? But, so I was always torn between that being good at languages and being good in the science subjects. So when I was at school, I was always torn between those two things. And it's a real shame that those things were torn and they weren't actually very integrated. The idea of being able to be good at languages, this is, of course, before coding was taught in schools. And of course, coding is a language. But also really enjoying the sciences and looking at what I could do down the sciences. So yeah, it was, my career path or my journey has not been a straight line at all. But I'm glad that I was good at languages because I'm using them now.
Yeah.
And you never forget when you learn a language, it's always somewhere in your brain. But yeah, never quite sure. I'm still tempted to go back and study medicine.
Of course, because, got
tempted.
nothing else going on.
Nothing else going on, loads of free time.
That's right. So just talk us through how you ended up in Australia. And I learnt, of course, as I was digging deeper into you, that you actually landed in WA. So just talk us through how that all came about, and really hard for you leaving family and particularly your mother behind.
Yeah. So, a lot of Australians are feeling it now because we're going into a recession, which has been triggered by the coronavirus pandemic. But, back in 2008, 2009, we had the global financial crisis. And the global financial crisis tipped everything on its head. And I was trying to explain this to my husband, who is an Australian, what it was to be in a world where everything stopped. Now, of course, he's living it at the moment, so he can relate to it a lot better. But in 2008, 2009, we weren't confined to staying at home, but we were confined in that there were no jobs. You could not get a mortgage. There was a credit crunch. You could not refinance. There were no loan capabilities, no credit card. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't move financially. Everything stopped pretty much overnight. It just crashed. And so I was living in London, scrambling around to find pieces of work, struggling to make that transition from academia to consultancy, which is one of the pathways environmental science graduates from PhDs go to, is to industry. And I was struggling to find a job that challenged me. I was struggling to find a job at all. And then when the global financial crisis hit, it was me versus, people with 20 or 30 years work experience, and then little me with my PhD and 2 years work experience. I was not ever going to do well. I didn't have a daddy with his boys network in the city to help me or anything like that. So it was a matter of going to my HR department and saying, look, this is my skill set, this is my CV, we're a global company, what can you find for me? And I thought, right, if I can't find it in the UK right now, let's go somewhere else, because I like traveling anyway. Let's go somewhere else, see what I can find, and then come back again in a year or two when things have warmed back up in the UK and I've got some interesting projects on my CV to talk about at interview, some decent experience. So I landed a couple of offers. One was in Austin, Texas, one was in Perth, Western Australia. And I took a look at the two and I thought, I'd never been to Australia and I wasn't sure that it was ever really going to be in my future. And that was 10 years ago. 2 babies and a marriage, a few businesses and a few awards and bits and bobs later, and it's 10 years on the 8th of July that I landed in Perth. And it was a freezing cold morning. And a very good friend of mine, and she's one of my sisters from a different mister now, a very good friend of mine in Perth, who I'd only met once at her father's funeral in the UK, was the twin sister of a girl I'd gone to university with. She came to pick me up at the airport, and it was freezing. It was July in Perth. It was freezing. She'd had to scrape the ice off her car window. And I was just like, this is not Neighbours. This is not Home and Away. This is not what I was expecting. This, massive storm that had hit Perth, and I was there stood on the beach with my hair being blown vertically, trying to figure out what on earth have I just signed up for. And there were a couple of people at work that were wonderful and are still very close friends of mine, and there were a couple of people at work that weren't very nice at all. And I was like, I really don't know why I'm here, and I'm going to give it a year. So I've given it a year, and then that's it. I'm going to go home. Anyway, 6 months later, from arriving, I met my now husband. And I thought, okay, I'll give it 18 months. All right, I'll give it 2.5 years. And then I fell in love with Australia. And yes, the winters in Perth can be a bit nasty. You're in Melbourne and you're having a fresh day today.
Indeed.
But, I'm British. I'm not really allowed to complain about the weather in Australia because I sit here in beautiful Brisbane with blue skies and, warm temperatures and the best climate in the world, Brisbane in winter. And I'm very British, there you go, look, talking about the weather. Incredibly British, even though I am an Australian now as well. So that was how I landed in Perth and then moved over to Brisbane to help develop the drone business line for the consultancy I was working for at the time, because my MD was here and he wanted to mentor me through that process. Yeah. So he pulled me, and all of our clients were majorly on the East Coast rather than the Western Australian coast, which was then having a bit of a slowdown. Yeah. So again, I was following where the work was again. And now I've landed in Queensland and had 2 babies here in Brisbane, and can't see myself leaving Brisbane anytime soon permanently. I love it. Australia's brilliant. What a magnificent accident of fate that there was this one particular opportunity.
Huh? That saying, it was meant to be, it was meant to be. The time that you had in WA sort of really opened up the opportunity for you in the drone world. And just talk us through how that all came about, because it's a fascinating story.
So I'm an environmental scientist by training, and remote sensing is one of the things that you're trained on, but you're trained from a remote sensing perspective as in satellites, what's Landsat's capabilities, or manned aircraft carrying heavy cameras around. Yep. Drones are never really part of that conversation 20 years ago when I was at university. They are now, because, again, drones are a platform technology that carry a payload that surveys what it is you're looking at. Yep. So I had a bit of a Goldilocks moment when I was a contract manager on a very large and complex multidisciplinary environmental monitoring program. And we would have to be mindful of the health and safety of every single scientist that we put and took up to site. It's a dangerous place to be, where there's biting things. You're in small planes looking at marine fauna. You're going in boats to small islands to walk around. There's so many different ways that people can get hurt doing that. Very happy to say that whole project was incident and injury free, but it took a lot of time and effort and training and process and an ongoing reminder about safety being first. Whereas when we looked at this particular piece of work, I was like, there's got to be a better way than this. There's just got to be a better way than this. And so we started looking at satellites. There was Cloud Cover 365. You could not see through regular satellites to the site. And even then, you're looking at a 2 or 3 meter resolution, which means each pixel on that image is the size of me or this couch, for example, right? Yeah. So that's not going to tell you anything about a disease on a leaf on a plant, or a turtle track and a turtle nest. It's just not going to give you the resolution you want. Yeah. Manned aircraft, so traditional planes with big cameras on, they couldn't fly slow enough to get the high-level vertical and horizontal resolution we'd need from the overlapping photography, photogrammetry we call that. Yep. The helicopters would run out of fuel before you got to the sites you wanted to get to, and couldn't carry payloads and fuel. We just couldn't find anything that was just right. And luckily I worked at a business that had a defense wing, which meant I could talk to people that were working on cutting edge methods of reconnaissance, so not anything with bombs on it, but just methods of reconnaissance, so search and rescue, recon, intel, and it was actually an Australian drone company that the Americans were using in Afghanistan for their insurgent monitoring. So what on earth does that do? So you'd be flying around a drone that was carrying a camera or a video on it that could take 1 centimeter accurate level horizontal and vertical imagery. So you could get a really beautiful model of a before and after. So they would be using these drones to fly around and look and take photos of where the army lads and lasses were walking up, on their regular patrols. So an insurgent might want to put an IED, some kind of improvised explosive device, in a car or under a bush or somewhere behind a brick wall or somewhere where they knew that the soldiers were walking up and down to then be able to blow them up, right? That was the game. You left something in play, like a broken down car, and then you'd leave it there for a month, and then you'd put an explosive device in it, and everyone would think it was safe because it had been there for a month. So what the drones could show is when someone puts an IED in a vehicle and then a wire that goes up and over a hill and behind a bush for that person then to watch and set it off, when they put the wire down, they bury the wire. So even though the wire is very small, the mound of sand that they've shifted is significant.
Yeah, bit of a giveaway.
Way. Not to a person, not to a human being walking up and down, you wouldn't see that. That would not be a significant difference in the landscape for you to notice. But a drone that's taking photographs at 1 centimeter resolution can see the before and the after really significantly. So that idea of being able to look at the before and after, this is how we do environmental monitoring. Okay, we do this thing called BATCHI. It's a before and after comparative index. We do this before and after comparison. So I was just like, how long can these things fly for? 20 hours. How far can they fly? They fly at 100 kilometers an hour and you've got 20 hours. I'm like, that's 2,000 kilometers of potential flight time. Okay, daylight's only for 10 hours. So you've got a 10-hour window in which you can fly these things. So you can cover 1,000 linear kilometers in that time. And so you just sort of start, the computer in your head just starts going off of what resolution can they fly? How low can they fly? How are they communicated? How can we, and I'm just like, sold. And so anyway, we took this to the client. And I got a bit Winston Churchill with the client, we will find the turtles on the beaches. This is going to be a complete game changer. You as a person, you can own this project. And it was, ding, 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 ding. And so we got the go. And I remember walking out of that meeting and I could not remember what I had said in that meeting, but we convinced them. And so we did the trial and it was a world first. It's still never really been repeated in any significance. And we showed that you could use long-range reconnaissance drones to do environmental monitoring without putting a human being in the field. But more importantly, without the wildlife that you're monitoring knowing that you are there. And that is a key thing, to be able to sample Mother Nature without sampling bias, to be able to watch animal behavior without affecting their behavior, gold for any ecologist. So I still look back at that project with deep love. It was painful. It took us a year to go. You've got 20 years to be an overnight success, right? It took us like 2 years to make that a success. And it was still, that was how I cut my teeth with the idea of drones.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, a lot has evolved in then. Drones are like dog years. So, a lot has evolved in the last, 7 years now since we did that project.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Now, I want to sort of move away from drones and talk a little bit about AI. And sort of around social license, new technologies and education opportunities. So I know that's really broad. So maybe from your perspective for our community, your definition of AI, and then just sort of go from there. Yeah.
Well, artificial intelligence for me is, for one, you could argue it's an oxymoron. How can something be intelligent if it's artificial? But let's not go down that theological route. A lot of terms that people use now is actually intelligence augmentation. I really am worried about using the term intelligence, though, because what we've found is, in some of the applications of AI across society, even now, people are just delegating their responsibility to a computer because the word intelligence is there. So they think they're obviously not as clever as it. Therefore, they think the computer can do a better job than them. But that's not the case in anything other than maybe chess and maybe simple game playing, right? We have this thing called the singularity, which is supposed to be when we will have a computer that has the power of a human brain.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That doesn't mean that they're human. And computers are very good at processing large amounts of data and finding patterns that may take a human being a while to do. But they're not very good at creating things. They're not very good at art. They're not very good at understanding nuances. They're terrible at common sense. We've only really just got robots being able to walk properly. So, you know, we're really in the nascence of this technology. It's just really being born now in terms of how it can be applied to our everyday lives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the major thing for me around artificial intelligence, computer vision, machine learning, is that these technologies could have amazing, and they will have amazing potential for human lives. For example, being able to detect cancer in a scan that a human eye might miss, that the AI might pick up, fantastic. Would you rely solely on the AI? No. I would still want a human being looking at that as well as an AI looking at it.
Yep.
Because there's things that the AI might not pick up. You've got no idea. This is why we always go for second or third referrals with some of these things. Machine learning, again, the ability to train a computer to train itself is something we're still getting onto the cutting edge of. That's still not like an everyday usable thing. My major concern with these technologies, though, is that they're going to be taken out of the sort of AI for good space and taken into a place where corporates will be using them and governments will be using them without us really knowing what it is they are or what people are using them for. Right. So my only call, if anyone takes anything away from today, is that you need to learn about artificial intelligence. You can do a grad cert at the ANU right now on machine learning and computer vision as part of the COVID federal government grad cert programs we've got. Get on there and learn about what artificial intelligence is and what machine learning is and how it's going to affect your everyday life. Interesting thing that's happened this week is a number of the major global corporations have decided to drop their facial recognition programs.
Oh,
now,
why
that's
is that?
an interesting thing. I don't quite understand why. Okay. And I also don't know that I quite believe it, quite frankly. Right. Because I'm concerned that if we only have certain players working in facial recognition, and they're not necessarily sovereign players, you know, so if we have other countries and other governments and other people working on facial recognition, and we're not, we're going to fall behind. Like this is the new weapons race, right? It's a new arms race. Yep. Is the race around facial recognition and AI. So I do feel like we need to not only develop these technologies, they shouldn't only be developed for corporate use, for making money. They should be developed, though, that society actually understands what they are, what the implications are, what the potential use is. I mean, every time you talk to kids or talk to people that aren't in the sciences about what some of these things could be used for, you'll find a plethora of new opportunities that the person that built it probably didn't ever think of. Yeah. You know, and this is the problem with, and we still have this problem with tech and in Silicon Valley and in other places, that the level of diversity of people that are producing these things is not reflective of society. A perfect AI would be developed by every single human being that ever that's existing right now on the planet. We want the whole of society working and contributing into these projects. That's not how they work. That's, you know, that's utopian. That's not how it works,
not
right?
Practical.
So how can we get like a better representation, even of Australians, inside the development of some of these technologies? That's a really, if you want to learn more about that one, there's a fantastic professor at ANU called Genevieve Bell, and she's running the 3A Institute, and these are the kinds of questions she has. So there's lots of information and content that she's put out on the internet that you can watch her talks and stuff around what this actually means for society. But what I like to talk to Genevieve about is, what does society mean for AI? Why are we always constantly passively imbibing what these technologies can do for us? Why don't we tell them what we want? And that's the big thing for me, is ownership, and get educated so you can make educated change and ask educated questions and challenge what it is that we see and that we're being fed through the media, through the movies, through the TV. We need to be able to turn that into an actual conversation rather than just, this is happening to us, because I just don't agree with that kind of passive, we can't do anything about it thing around artificial intelligence.
I think that you know, there's so much, and it comes down to being educated, but there's so much talk about, you know, is AI going to replace humans and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, there's so many things that AI already does that people probably don't even know that it's actually AI off the top of your head. And I know, question without notice, but any thoughts on what that might be? You know, is it as simple as, I don't know, a lift button or, you know, something like that? Is that...
Well, something that I find quite interesting is the way AI is being used to monitor human health. Yeah. So they've got projects and programs in, but they can actually watch you walk, and they can actually pick up people with Parkinson's before they have any other symptoms just by a computer watching how you walk. It can pick up micro changes that a human, a well-trained human, of course, could also pick up.
Yeah.
But the ability to process information really quickly, the ability for us to identify ourselves is going to need artificial intelligence. So in China, for example, now you can pay for things just with your face. Like facial recognition takes your payment. So AI literally looks at your face and then goes straight out of your bank account. We're looking at what we call biometric. One of the things I like is the fact that, you know, how you type on a keyboard is very unique to you. It's a bit of a digital footprint that you do every day because you're typing and interfacing with software every day. So now one of the things they're thinking of, instead of just using your fingerprint or your facial recognition to open your computer, you might have to type your name in. And it's how you type your name in. How do you copy how someone types, right? So other things, yeah, it's very clever, isn't it?
Yeah,
other things that artificial intelligence can help us with and does with is a lot of our financial systems, a lot of our financial processing.
Yeah.
All of the apps that you have on your phone that are constantly collating and processing data about you all have some kind of AI, machine learning, data processing software and handling behind it, which makes our lives a lot faster, you know, to do things than we were 10 years ago.
And really interesting because that kind of leads into the next point, you know, around data. You know, you and I had a conversation the other day around data and, you know, what was your sentence? We don't own our data, you know, and if that's right, then, you know, who does? And I know you're currently writing a book at the moment about this as well, so we can touch on that. But, you know, how do we educate people so that they know the right questions to actually ask so that they can actually look at this from an educated perspective? So who owns our data, Cath?
Well, whoever you give it to, Anne. And this is the thing. When was the last time you read the T's and C's on an app on your phone or your computer when you downloaded it?
Yeah, never.
Never. I've read it once and it almost put me to sleep. People that think lawyers don't have a job going forwards really have never read the T's and C's on the back of an app. So for me, data literacy is a human right. Data literacy is going to be our new human right. This is going to be something that will form us as a society.
Yeah.
Because if we can't interrogate the propaganda that we are fed, if we can't understand it enough to disagree with it, or understand it enough to even recognize what it is, we are in really big trouble. Yeah. And I mean, during this pandemic, how many of us have looked at exponential graphs for the first time since being in school, right? Or for the first time ever for some people. I mean, and if I took a straw poll, and this isn't about people are not stupid, people just haven't been taught this.
Yeah.
You know, and I said to someone, what's a logarithmic scale? And I'm like, yeah. What's an exponential graph? You know, and we're relying upon this data, this information we're being, for there's data and there's information, there are two different things, right? So we're being led with the information, which is processed data that is then shown to us on a graph, on a website.
Yep.
Oh, we're flattening the curve. Are we? Oh, our RO value is going down. Is it? Like, we are being fed these numbers and we're clinging on to them like, you know, like flotation devices after a boat's just sank. But we have no idea what they actually mean. Yep. And the reason why we started this book project, Dr. Linda McIver and I, and she runs the Australian Data Science Education Institute, not-for-profit, teaching kids in schools about data science. And I just couldn't agree with her more about that. Because she and I had a conversation one day, and I got really angry. And I said, oh, Linda, I've got angry. I feel like we need to do something. Because when I get angry, it kind of motivates me to do something. So this book will be the start of a larger project around data science literacy, in Australia. So it's going to be a bit rebellious, but I'm really excited. So we've been interviewing some amazing people for the book, including Peter Doherty, which people may be familiar with from all of his work and his Nobel Prize, and people like Eleanor Huntington, who's the Dean of Engineering at ANU, and her idea about reimagining engineers. And data engineering is going to be a thing. There's already a great friend of mine, Susan, runs a drone company that plants trees, like fires pods to plant trees. Right. And she's got a job going at the moment, if anyone's interested, as a data ecologist. So data ecologist is a brand new job title. Right. That never existed before. Susan created that, I believe. And so this idea of data being part of how we live. So there'll be a data analyst for everything in our lives. There's going to be so many jobs that come out of the data industry. But unfortunately, I'd suggest most of us that are in our 40s or so have never had this level of training that we would need. We've never had it. We didn't have it in school. Probably had a horrible experience with maths where we didn't really enjoy maths maybe, or we didn't understand why we were being taught it. And they are the fundamentals to what we need now going forwards. So yes, I got angry. And so we decided to write a book, and it's going to be amazing. Hopefully out for your Christmas reading. It'll be out for your beach reading.
Excellent. So, coming out of the pandemic, silver linings, for businesses, what do you see? Do you think there will be? I'm sure there will be, but, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so we are going through a one-way door, and how you behave in wartime is not how you behave in peacetime. But when you go through a war, when you come into peacetime, things are changed. And I sit here with some, I sit here with some of this lovely hand sanitizer next to me here. Yeah. Is hand sanitizer ever going to disappear from our lives? Or are we going to have some form of, when you buy an expensive hand cream, it's got some kind of silver product in it that kills bacteria and viruses or something? I don't know. Yep. Business models have shifted to cope with people being at home more. Now, what I would like to hope is, and I've seen this with my fruit box delivery person, that he's a really good business example actually, just to go to a non-tech, but it was tech kind of business. So he was delivering all the fruit and veggies for all the poshest restaurants in Brisbane. And of course, all the restaurants closed. Yep. So what do? So he started doing food boxes. Yep. So there's food box list, and I'll name it, it's called Suncoast Fresh. I love it. So there's all these different food boxes you can have. You can even donate fruit and veggies to Australia Zoo. You can donate a fruit and veggie box to a person who might not have the money to buy the fruit and veggie box. You can buy couples boxes, single small boxes. I get the big deluxe box because I just like all the weird fruit, and I'm vegetarian, so I go through all the fruit and veggies anyway. My toddler likes the strawberries pretty much, and that's okay with me. We get through it. So he created a new business from his existing business, supply chain. And part of me thought, why did you never do this before? Yeah. Why is it that your business has had to move to a different delivery mode, to different client base? You could have set that up and been doing that. If you'd said to me, if I'd seen this advert through social media or through word of mouth, oh, my mate, that he supplies all these really cool fruit and veggies to the city, but he's also got this home delivery box, I'd be like, really? Well, I'm interested in a home delivery fruit and veggie box. Yeah. So it's almost like business models that people could have been doing, they weren't doing because they were, doing the business model that they knew. That risk aversion to trying new things has been taken away because they've had to change. Yeah. And this is where the changes to the Corporations Act have been very interesting to watch. What does this mean for board directors? At the moment, the idea of fiduciary duty around insolvency, all as board directors have been given 6 months breathing room around the idea of trading insolvent, because the world is trading insolvent right now. Yep. So can you still apply the legal frameworks from pre-coronavirus pandemic to current times? No. Can you apply them afterwards? Probably, but in a slightly different and evolved way. We're going to have to look after our businesses as much as we can, keep as many of them alive. Actually, I'll rephrase that. Keep as many of our viable businesses alive as we possibly can as we go through. I'm finding that this is one of the silver linings is this is a great exfoliation of our businesses in this country. In that businesses that can evolve or find new ways of working should continue to do that, but they should still have what they were always really good at. Yes. And I don't see why they can't have those two things. Yep. Because I will still, even when I am no longer locked down and I'm flying to see you in Melbourne, when I'm working around all over the place, I will still have my veggie box delivered because it's brilliant quality, great local business, local suppliers, really fresh, decent produce. I love it. I am never going to stop having that fruit and veggie box. Yeah. And I'm not sponsored by them, right? So I'm never going to stop having that fruit and veggie box. But he can continue about his business. So then there's other people that have had to move from, say, a classroom-based program if they're an education company, and now we're going, oh, but we're doing everything online. And I'm like, well, everything's already online. So actually, what you're doing is saturating a market that can't really handle it. And I think pretty much all of us are teched out. We all get Zoom throat by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Yep, done. And so that isn't going to work. Office space will still exist. We will still go to the office. Mm-hmm. And businesses and landlords and rental properties in the city should see this as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Because if we want to start having social distancing built into our desk spaces, if we want to have closed off pods where there's no one near us, if we want to get rid of, please, let's get rid of the open plan office. If anything was going to kill the open plan office, it is this. Please, can we kill the open plan office? The open plan office, whoever decided the open plan office was a good idea, and I know that I have a voice for theatre, not for office, And I know, and I've been annoyed, and I'm sure I have annoyed many of my co-workers when I get excited on the telephone about something, because I have a bit of a hearing feedback thing as well with me, which is when I get loud and excited. I can't hear how loud and excited I'm getting. So the open plan office for me was a terrible, terrible idea for a long time. But it came out of Silicon Valley where no one had any money and everyone was working in a wardrobe, basically. Everyone was working in a cupboard,
Yeah,
you know, or a side office space.
Yep.
Or a garage, because they had no money and they had no space.
Yep.
Well, guess what? It was not suitable to have 50 people on a floor in an open plan way with pods. That for me was just horrible. I hated it. So hopefully the pandemic will kill that. So landlords in the city will want more social distancing. We will want to have networking areas, but they'll need to be bigger because we'll have to have social distancing.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll drop to a 4 or a 3-day working week. We've had studies galore tell us over the years that a 4-day working week is more efficient than a 5-day working week. And in fact, a 3-day working week is probably the Goldilocks sweet spot. So we'll figure out what that's going to look like going forwards. So in terms of, you know, tech and how this is going to help us, we will still have times where we will be talking remotely. Absolutely we will. But that for me is a good thing, because even if you and I were sat on this sofa, why wouldn't we still be doing this live across the internet? Because yes, we could fill this hall here with what, 100, 200 people?
Yep.
Great. But we could reach 100 or 200,000 people.
Yep.
If we had this filmed on the internet and freely available to anybody, regardless of their, you know, geographical location, time of day,
Yep.
they could watch it back, right? So
Yep.
why don't we always film and produce? And that's one of the things I think is going to be the biggest change for a lot of businesses, is rather than just being consumers, being producers. And I think this is where events is particularly interesting, the hybrid model around how events are going to be operated.
Yeah.
It means that you're going to still be able to give people that wonderful, natural, accidental meeting that we all love, that you can never replicate.
Yep.
But it also means that, for example, if I'm stuck and I can't fly for some reason, like a volcano's gone off in Indonesia and I'm stuck trying to get back in from LA or something and I can't fly into Australia, I can still beam in on a little beam-in robot and drive myself around and say hello to people on this little beam-in robot driving around the Congress, right? Or wherever it is that I want to be.
Yep.
So I feel like that we've learned a lot through this pandemic about how we want to work and how we don't want to work. And I really hope that we don't lose that memory so quickly. It looks like in the UK, people have forgotten already slightly. When you see the queues of people outside cheap clothes shops, for example, fighting
Yep.
with each other to get into Nike, I'm like, is this what we fought for? Right?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Is this what our grandparents went to war for our
Yeah.
freedoms, to be able to fight to get into a shop?
Yep.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
But I think I've been feeling that for quite some time. But yeah, so there's an opportunity for businesses that have had to adapt to the new scenario, not completely flexing back to exactly what it was they were doing before. And if you did that mindlessly, I'd say that you really shouldn't be in business.
So
You're losing an opportunity.
one of the things that our community is talking about now is you with an unbelievable drive and an incredible passion. So how do you maintain that, and what tips do you have for our community?
I think you just need to care about things.
Yeah, got to love what you
I think you just need
do.
to care about things. You have to love what you do, or you have to do what you do because you hate something else that you've seen that you want to change.
Yeah.
Right? I think we don't sit back on our laurels now and just let the world evolve silently. We have to have voices, but also those of us that are in positions of privilege, we need to help amplify the voices that don't have that privilege. And we need to take a stock actually of how we work with and how we can be better allies with parts of society that don't have that platform and that privilege. Because we should be getting angry about how they are being treated, or we should be getting angry about the systemic systems of abuse that are set up, or we should be having angry conversations with people and our politicians about what we want our country to look like in 2021.
Yeah.
2020 is gone, right? We've just got to get through it.
Correct.
So what do we want our country to look like in 2021? Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things for me and I can't have a public forum like this and not mention it, is the recognition of Indigenous Australians in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. You know, the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Very good friend of mine, Fiona Jose, is the CEO of Cape York Partnerships. And every time I think I'm going to be able to be a better ally, I call Fiona. And I've been trying to connect with her again this week. Because I feel like I don't know enough. And I'm a new Australian. And I understand that I will never understand what it is like. And that makes me angry and it makes me sad. And therefore, I have to do something about it.
Yeah.
But it's not the story for me to tell. It's the story for my friends to tell. And so how do I, as an individual, actually help give some of my spotlight or some of my platform to their voices?
Yeah, fantastic.
I think if we all did that a little bit, the world would be an incredibly better place.
Yeah, fantastic. There is a question, I'm mindful of the time too, Cath. So what's the website that we can learn more about machine learning? I'm keen to explore it more, and that's from Ellie.
Hi, Ellie. Okay, so there's a couple of things. You can look at you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can provide you with a load of links and a load of things that we can get to. And you and I can maybe share some links through when we post this on YouTube, we can pop some links through.
Okay.
If you've got some time and energy, I'd really recommend having a look at the ANU's Grad Cert on Machine Learning and Computer Vision, because then you'll be getting some education straight from the horse's mouth at ANU, and that really is the best place in the country, I think, to study machine learning and artificial intelligence. Follow a woman on social media called Genevieve Bell, B-E-L-L. I think her Twitter handle is Feral Data. And so she posts amazing things and is constantly in podcasts. She did the Boyer lectures back in 2017 for the ABC. So she's just fantastic. If you can watch anything that Genevieve Bell's done, then you're ahead. Also, Ellen Broad produced a book called Made by Humans that was published a year or so ago. So have a look for that book, Made by Humans, because that's actually a really great start a conversation about what AI means in a human world, not what humans mean in an AI world.
Awesome. Quickly, 3 takeaways for our community today.
Okay, so I was thinking long and hard about this because I had too many, as always.
Yeah, I think you had 10, didn't you?
I had about 10 that I wanted to say. So my first takeaway really is to be better at making choices, okay? So as we go forward into a world where we are going to still be globalised, but we're wanting to renationalise some things like manufacture, we need to support Australian businesses to get through the next couple of years. So instead of rushing out to buy things because they look like they're on sale or they're cheap, spend more money on fewer things and buy Australian where you can, because we really need to put our own oxygen masks on first at this time. We will be a lighthouse economy. We will be one of the first economies that come fully back online, but we need to support the companies that we know and love and that we agree with their values, you know, and their environmental sustainability and all of that. Really be careful where you spend your money, but spend it well and spend it for something to last for 20 years, not for 2 weekends. That's probably one of my first things.
Yeah.
The second one is get educated. We are in a position right now where they call this the great pause. So it may be that there's something like I've still got medical school sitting in the back of my head, genuinely, you know, going, I really still wish that I'd done that. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I could. Maybe there's something that's sitting on your shoulder or in the back of your head that you always wanted to do. I've just deleted my Facebook profile. Remove yourselves from the weapons of mass distraction that are fueled by social media, and spend an hour a day or half an hour a day on a language learning app. Like I'm learning Japanese at the moment, you know, breastfeeding and learning Japanese at the same time through my mobile phone. Why not? I decided I'd just do it.
As you do.
So do that thing that's always been niggling at you. Learn about machine learning, get involved. Find your local university, talk to the university that you went to, talk to your local TAFE, pick up a new skill, do it with a friend. So, you know, become a plumber, become an electrician, look at some of these skill sets that will literally open the world to you. You could get a job anywhere in the world if you're a qualified plumber or electrician. So, you know, have a look at some of the things that you've always wanted to do and you've never done. This is the time to do it, because as soon as our economy starts ramping back up again and bounces back the way we're expecting it to, we're all going to get very busy again. Yep. So maybe take a time and take a stop to do the thing that you want to do that you've never done before. So that's my second one. And then, and get educated. That's my second one. So then my third one would probably be, I lost a very dear aunt of mine in February, and she was probably one of my silent mentors. She was always the angel in my midst. She was always the person that was there, that was steering me and guiding me and championing me. So when it comes to looking to how you personally either survive, thrive, grow, change, remember your silent mentors. Remember those people that have always been there, and maybe tap back into that resource whilst we're feeling stressed, whilst we're feeling this, there's this quiet, grinding, nervous anxiety around this whole pandemic that's affecting a lot of people I know psychologically, including myself. I've had a few bad nights of insomnia, and I've got 2 very young children, and I really worry about what things can be. And so I've had to stop hammer time, and make phone calls, send text messages, make FaceTimes, connect with people who I've been so busy I never had the time. And I look now and I can't do that with my Auntie Arlene anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry to end on a sad note.
That's okay.
But it's we have to, recognize the angels in our midst and maybe give ourselves the gift of spending time with them. That might be my third one.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think one of the things that's definitely come out of the Fireside Chats, Cath, is that people are really missing that whole, people are finding now that they're actually starting to become more connected, particularly to families and friends, and are doing exactly what you're talking about. Really important to reach out during this time, particularly to some of your sort of friends or family that might be quite vulnerable at this point in time. So great advice. So last question for today, Cath. Name one thing you will never take for granted again post-COVID-19. You can only give me one. I know you've probably got 100, but you can only give me one.
Can I tell you a story of how I used to live my life that I really would like back again?
Yes.
Just conscious of time as well.
That's all right.
I obviously have had 2 small children in the space of 3 years, well, 23 months actually between them. Yeah. And I've kept working. I didn't have maternity leave. I've just kept going. I've not stopped. Yeah. And there's always been this little moment, little bubble. If you said to me, okay, you can go somewhere for 10 minutes. If I'm just going to take you somewhere in time and space in your life, you can just go there for 10 minutes. Everyone's fine and healthy. Nothing's going to happen whilst you're away. You can just go there for 10 minutes. Do you know where I'd go?
Where?
This is going to sound terribly frivolous. I would sit in the Qantas Business Lounge, probably the one in Melbourne, the International First Class Lounge actually in Melbourne, and I would have a gin and tonic. I'd have a gin and tonic next to me. I'd have my flight tickets there, my passport there. I'd be flying to somewhere like Tokyo or Singapore or Auckland or Los Angeles or Vancouver or London, and I'd be sat there knowing that I was about to go somewhere with a gin and tonic, just there. No breastfeeding worries, no tiredness worries, no nothing. My face is perfectly moisturized, my cuticles are perfectly moisturized, the world is perfect, and I'm there, I'm just there. And people go, you're in an airport. And I'm like, look, no, I'm in a bubble. I'm not in an airport. I'm in a bubble of time where you've gone through check-in and you're just in that beautiful pause before you get on the aircraft, where there's just people that are looking after you, trying to give you food and drink. Yeah. And you sit there and you just drink the food and you eat the food and you drink the drink, and the world is perfect. Is that terribly frivolous?
No.
That is where I would go.
No, that's about me time. I mean, that sort of talks to how busy your life is and just having that moment in time that is just your moment in time. Yeah. Really, really important. Dr. Catherine Ball, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic, incredibly insightful. And I know that our community have absolutely loved having you with us, joining us today.
Well, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with people, and if they've got questions or like further information, I'm always really happy to share my network with people.
And a couple of people are saying, I always drink champagne at the airport before an international flight, no matter what the time is. So there you go.
There you go. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you. Hopefully see you all soon.
Yeah. Bye. Oh.